Hey guys, thanks for joining us tonight. Singing the lovely song was Valerie, my assistant. She is running the computer station today. So let me know if we have any audio or video issues. Hopefully everything's going to go smoothly tonight. We tried to iron out all the bugs earlier, but we got a warning message about 5 minutes before we went live that we were dropping frames. So if somebody can shout out whether or not we have decent audio, if the video is coming through, then we will be good to go. And I guess I'll wait to introduce the truck until we get that go ahead.
There's a bit of a lag, just so you know.
So we do have a little bit of a lag. Earlier, it was like 2 seconds, and now it's probably like 15 seconds. I guess everyone's at home on the internet watching the stream. So what we're going to do is, if you guys haven't joined us before, this is viewer-based diagnostics. I will try to do tests that you guys give me to perform on the vehicle that is relevant to the problem we're having. We're not going to check, something off the wall, or if I don't have the equipment or we don't have the time for it, then we won't check that. I did some preliminary tests on this truck, and I'm hoping we can get it to act up in the shop. I think we can. We good?
Yeah, sound and audio is good.
Okay. So rundown on this truck, 2006 Chevy Silverado 2500. The customer complaint is sometimes it runs rough, sometimes it'll really close to stalling, a couple times it's stalled. I've gotten the truck to stall on me, so I think we can get it to act up enough in the shop to go ahead with the diagnostic process in the bay. I can plug the scanner in and connect codes, but the customer brought the truck from another shop. It was at that shop for almost a month. It's been sitting here for a week for me to have some time to work on it. I pulled it in the other night and did some preliminary checks, but wanted to save it for this weekend. The other shops, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 shops, have put in a fuel pump. I can't remember if this one has a filter on the frame rail. I'd hope they would have replaced the filter at the same time. They did 1 or more oxygen sensors. I don't know which ones. I didn't crawl underneath to look to see if any were new. And they had the dealership reflash the PCM. I don't think any other independent shop in town is currently doing reflashes, so I'm guessing it went back to the Chevy dealership. I don't know if they paid for diagnostic at the dealership or if they just went in saying, I want the PCM reflashed. The customer told us they have about $1,200 racked up in repair bills already, and the truck is not fixed. It still acts up. So I'm guessing that all the other stuff that was done wasn't fixing the cause that they're having. They may have been faulty. The fuel pressure may have been low. The waveform, if they actually checked that, may have been bad. The O2 sensors could have been slow. There could have been codes for that stuff, but it didn't fix the problem that they're having. So that's why it came here, and that's what we're gonna do.
Okay, I'm gonna read them as I see them.
Yeah.
Keith wants you to check the tire pressure, please.
TPMS light's not on.
It's run out of tornadoes. Chris. Fuel pump, a month. Wow. Cuba. Intake pressure waveforms and relative compression.
Okay.
Wow, not a Chrysler. Andrew K. Then I would like an injector drop test. Keith. Complaint is a stall or low power also.
Low power at times, running rough, and intermittent stall.
Alejandro, pre-scan.
Okay, pre-scan, let me plug in the Zeus. I got it connected on the stream. We'll jump to that screen once I get some readings, and then we can do an injector drop test if you guys want. I'll get hooked up and we'll get started on the code scan. I should have hooked up a battery maintainer for some of the testing you guys may have me do on this truck, but we'll give it a shot. Sometimes I do have to let it run for a little while before it acts up. So if that's the case, we'll start it up. We'll let it run while we're doing some other test. We'll wait for the Zeus to connect to the wireless interface. Should be any second now. There we go.
You want on the scanner?
Yeah. So hopefully it'll pull up the VIN number.
Silverado, made with real tornadoes. That's your brother.
Okay, we're gonna do a code scan. We're gonna do a pre-scan. We'll see. You can switch back to the Lumix.
In there.
We'll see what the system has to offer. It did not have codes the other day. That was a self-inflicted code. I caused that one. But there was no codes the other day. I scanned it before I got it to act up. I didn't pull codes again after I got it to act up in the shop. So it looks like you can switch to the scanner.
How much diag time do we have approved? I hate to be the materialistic of the group. That was Alejandro.
Realistically, of a normal customer, I get 1 hour of approval up front. And then if I can't figure it out within 45 minutes and I don't have a good direction of where I'm going, I'm going to have to do a lot more testing. Then I authorize more diagnostic time. If I have a direction I'm going and I know which tests need to perform, then I can give an estimate of how much diagnostic time is needed to get those tests done. And then we can sell those tests individually. We typically just lump it all into one diagnostic labor line, starting with an hour. Typically the maximum I go is 2 hours, unless it's something that the vehicle has multiple issues.
Zeus, I'm out of here, puking face. That was Keith.
Well, Keith, my Modus doesn't have an HDMI output, and neither does my launch scanner. So not that it matters much, but which are you on?
I'm on the scan tool.
Okay. We have codes in the engine from the generator. I caused that code, and the alternator was whining really bad earlier, so I unplugged it to see if it would change the way it was running. The airbag system has a front crash sensor, no surprise. Failure code there, it probably needs replaced. Daytime running lamp control circuit malfunction. So that looks like it. No global codes either. So we'll switch back to the Lumix.
We're there.
So I heard someone say injector drop test. Was that Keith? We could do that. We can run it. We can see if we can get it to act up. You guys let me know what test we're going to do next.
Well, there's one up here. It says, agreed with code scan and driver seat test and follow up with cranking cadence, RC with a sync, and intake pulse if needed.
Okay. We can do a relative compression check real quick. I'll see if I can do a clear flood. We'll listen to the cadence of that and see if we need to go further. I have the amp clamp ready, so I guess while we're doing that, we may as well get a capture.
Scanner? Not yet.
Not yet. You can throw the underhood.
Airbag sensor causing CKP feedback. Any testing within reason, tooling capabilities.
Yes, as long as I have the tooling and it's not a time involved test, I'm going to do the relative without sync at this first test just to see if we have any reason to hook up a sync.
Live data, closed loop trims, MAF, calculated load, ECT, O2 sensors. That was Billy Yoder.
Okay, real quick, let me get this set up. We should be good there. Drop this down to a 1 volt scale. We don't need a second channel. Okay, let me do a relative compression check and we'll see if we have an obvious problem that we should go after. I do have my amp clamp on backwards, but hopefully we can work around that. I don't know if I can invert this afterwards, but let me zoom in on this waveform, or at least blow it up a little bit. So it's going to be hard for me to zoom in. I'm not 100% proficient with the snap-on scope. I know we can zoom out, but I don't know if we can zoom in any further than this, height-wise. So looking at it, and keep in mind that this is inverted, it looks fairly even. There might be one that's a little low, and what I can do is I can flip this onto AC couple just to magnify it. We know that we're not going to exceed a 100 millivolt scale.
Don't look at the CAN bus waveform. LOL. That was
Yeah, there's been
Mario.
who?
Mario.
Yeah, we might be here for a couple hours if we do that. Let me flip the clamp. And we are AC coupled. Let me see if I have a trigger that's reasonable. And keep in mind, if it was an intermittent issue, it could be a valve sealing issue, but that typically wouldn't cause the stalling that the customer complained about.
Must invert prior to the capture with snap-on scope.
I did flip my meter around, so I don't have to invert it this time.
That was trained by techs. Kuba should have taken Bryn's class at SS.
I should have.
Cannot manipulate the capture after the recording. Trained by techs. That's why snap-on scopes suck. If they'd zoom in, they'd be great.
Okay, so here we have a pretty even cranking waveform. I don't think there's anything here that I'm going to chase after. We'll just we'll say that is relative enough to move past that point. So I don't think we need to sync. What's the next test? I heard live data. I do have a hose on it so we can run it in the shop. Colorado in October. It's getting cold outside. Yesterday we had snow on the ground. Today was 70 degrees, and now it's already down to like 40 tonight.
Cadence sounds okay. Amps delta with equal humps looks good. Trained by techs.
Okay, so we're good there. Thanks for the confirmation. We're going to jump into our data display. And I think I heard mass airflow, O2 sensors, intake air temp, coolant temp.
Phil Holbrook's asking what's the complaint. Trained by techs, low power stalling?
Stalling?
No, it's
Complaint is intermittent rough running, intermittent stalling. We'll go to a custom data list. We'll pick engine RPM, coolant temp, intake air temp, mass airflow.
Live data driver seat tests.
I don't have any way to test drive it with all the equipment hooked up, and I wish I had a dyno in the shop, but I don't. I think that's what I heard you guys list off. If there's more, let me know and I'll add it.
I'll say possibly an oxygen sensor sticking rich or lean. Phil?
Okay, we'll have to see if we can get it to act up. It hasn't acted up yet while it's running. Let me grab the O2 sensors on the screen for you.
Does this thing act up at idle or only under load?
It acts up at idle, intermittently under load, but I've got it to stall sitting in the bay running at idle a couple of times.
Trained by techs, I hear alternator AC ripple test.
Okay, so while this is showing our O2 sensors, we can see here that our front O2 sensors are switching back and forth.
Mario wants MAF and fuel trims long and short term. Thank you, Chris.
We have
Oh, sorry.
mass airflow is sitting at 6.3 grams per second. This is a 6-liter engine, so that is pretty close. We are at higher altitude here in Colorado, so if that's not quite what you normally see, if you normally see a little higher, that's probably the reason. Our baro, that is normal for us, 24. Our map sensor's at 9, which would give us about 15 inches of vacuum. Fuel trims look relatively good, really close to 0.
Bad diode, trained by techs.
Okay, so next test we'll do is a voltage test.
Working on that portable dyno still, Chad? That's Chris.
I am. Right now it's called a floor jack and some jack stands.
Fuel sample, Barry Hall. Ignition switch, Phil. It is a Chevy after all, Phil.
What was the last one?
It's a Chevy after all.
Oh. Okay, so we're going to jump into our scope again.
G103, turn headlights on. Keith.
Okay, so you want the headlights on. Now that it's running, I can do that. Let me change my scale here just so we can see how much alternator ripple we have. We have quite a bit.
Trained by Tex and Chris also want the lights on.
So just to see what our charging voltage is, we'll look at this real quick, and then we will jump into... So we're not charging very high right now. The alternator's whining. We're sitting at 11.7 volts. So you guys that were questioning the alternator, let me make sure I plugged it in all the way. I can hear it whining, but I'm sure that it is plugged in all the way. And I'm testing at the battery. Just making sure that it does jump up a little bit when I raise the RPM. It's not a very pretty waveform.
Sorry. Wish I could stick around. Dad duty calls. I'll catch up soon, Chad. Mario.
Yeah, thanks, Mario. So let's check what our AC ripple is. We know our charging volts are just under 12, which isn't enough. We're sitting at idle with the headlights on. Let me AC couple it. We'll drop this down to about 1 volt. That's not real pretty. So we have almost a volt of AC ripple. But I can assure you that that even though that alternator is bad, it wasn't what I was finding during my preliminary checks. So Keith said ground 101, G101.
Is it 101 or 103? G103.
Okay.
Keep in mind you're testing at the battery. AC ripple will be higher at that alt post.
Okay.
Trained by Tex.
I'm going to switch our leads to the engine. So we have an entirely different waveform now. So it looks like we're picking up some more noise on top of the ripple, but our ripple isn't quite as bad. We do have some spikes here and there.
I wouldn't go further until I had good supply voltage battery / voltage battery.
Where at? Oh, so we need to fix that first. Okay. I unfortunately don't have a alternator here to throw on it and see if that fixes the issue. And actually it hasn't acted up yet. I don't know how long it'll have to run before it does act up. In order to cause a intermittent stumble, low voltage could cause that intermittent stall, especially with the AC ripple that we have. That could be an issue. So
Unplug alternator, see if it goes to default. Charge rate of 13.7 VDC. Billy Yoder. Ooh, big ripples.
what's that?
Nothing, it was just cute.
Oh. Okay, we're sitting with no AC ripple right now. Our live voltage actually shows a little higher than what it did when it was charging, probably just because of the AC ripple.
Spikes are from not grounded well. Drew.
Okay. So, should we be checking voltage drop anywhere?
Phil. Voltage dropped, engine block, ground body, ground. Brand new plugs grabbed right.
This is coil near plug, so it has the coils on the valve cover. It's got a 6-liter engine, so the very short coil ignition leads, they are all routed properly. I don't see anything routed over any wires or anything like that. Do you guys want voltage drop with it running or cranking? Oh, wait, one sec before she reads that comment. Since I plugged the alternator in and changed the load a little bit, I can hear a little bit of a hiccup in the engine. Go ahead.
No, she's not reading that comment. She almost read that comment. We skip to the next one. Oh, Lord. New coil, but was going to amp clamp that coil. Keith. Maybe he's just talking to Keith. Sorry. Oh, Lordy. Let me find a real comment.
Okay, we are,
Okay, I got one.
right now, real quick, we have the battery negative on the negative lead to the battery negative. I have the positive lead on the alternator bracket. It is acting up worse and worse.
Voltage drop the ground side of coils if you want to check G102.
Is that Keith?
By the way, yes.
Okay.
Voltage drop alternator case to battery negative full loads. Billy.
Okay, that's where I'm at right now. Let me turn the blower on high just to see if we get any more of a voltage drop. Okay, so we are showing that ripple. Whenever the vehicle hiccups, we get that weird glitch in the ripple. So let me zoom in a little bit. I'm so used to the Pico scope where I can zoom in afterwards that sometimes I forget I have to zoom in ahead of time.
$2 from Keith for valve saving your buttocks. You want me on the scanner? Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so here is the alternator case to the battery negative. For some reason the RPMs just picked up a little bit, but we're still showing quite a bit of ripple, but our voltage drop isn't that high. We do have a lot of spikes in there though. So what I heard, I don't know if you guys could pick that up over me talking and everything else, was it sounded like an ignition misfire. I heard someone earlier wanting a fuel sample. I can get that if you guys want, or we can, we should probably find some way in case it starts acting up again to find out if we're losing spark or if we have a misfire. So I think what we can do is, unless there's a suggestion.
No suggestions, but a comment.
Yeah.
From Phil. I tested an alternator on an '04 Yukon. Friday kid working there says, "Why you testing on an alternator?" I said, "Okay." Sorry, tripped over my words. "Why are you testing? Put an alternator on." I said, "Okay." Alternator didn't fix it. LOL. Oh, whoops, sorry, wrong screen.
Okay, I shut off some of the loads just because the RPM was racing. I think it was more prevalent when the RPMs was down lower. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump and grab a diagram of the ignition system. So that's going to tell us where our powers are coming from. We can check voltage, whether it's coming from an ignition switch or a power relay, and we can check our grounds.
Moving to the laptop.
Yep.
You're in frame too, just so you know.
Yeah. Now I'm just going to jump in Altus here real quick to grab the VIN. I find that it's easier just to copy that over whenever I'm looking up information.
Alternator winding, amp clamp, alternator output. Billy.
Okay.
Current ramp on fuel pump is easy. Joe's Auto Electric.
So I got the VIN number.
Let's grab a secondary ignition and monitor. Chris.
Okay, which cylinder, Chris?
Yay, he's gonna jump.
I'm going to jump.
Oh, you're gonna jump on over to the computer? Maybe?
Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to punch in ignition coil here. If you guys haven't used some of the new features in this program, it'll lead you straight to the wiring diagram you need, or it's supposed to. It works most of the time. Ignition coil, click there. It is a gas engine, extended cab, four-wheel drive. A lot of questions. Use that vehicle. We will jump down here to wiring diagrams, and this will give us the pinout for the coil as well, I believe. So there's a diagram. Here's the pinout for the ignition coil. I know it says door latch assembly, but up here it says ignition coil. So that's good to know. And then let's click on this diagram. It highlighted one ignition coil for me, which all of them should have a similar power source. Let's see here. Black wire, they're all tied to those same grounds, and it says G102. So let me show you that on the screen real quick. So right here is the engine ground, left side of engine, G102, terminal A of every single one of those coils. And it looks, oops, I knew I was going to do that. It looks like all the coils share the same ground. Let's see if they share the same power source. It looks like there might be two power sources unless they splice together at another point. So shrink this back down. I'll go back to the next diagram. It keeps those wires highlighted for me so I can jump through here until we get to the fuse block. Okay, so it looks, well, that's not ignition fuse, that's the injector fuse. So if we test at this fuse and this fuse, we can scope all the coils at once. Since it says injector fuse, I'm guessing that half the injectors also run off of those fuses.
That ground should be attached to the same lug as the main engine block ground. Joe?
Okay. Operator error. Okay, so we have two injector fuses. I'll jump under the hood, grab those. We can also grab that ignition ground. I'll shut the engine off real quick. So it's a little quieter in here. Shut the headlights off so we're not draining the battery down since that alternator is only partially working.
You have
So-
a hose hooked up to your exhaust, right?
Yeah.
Okay, they're asking.
Yep. Let's pop the cover on the fuse block. I'm hoping I have enough fuse taps here. Can you see under there, or do I need a light?
Let me switch over there. A light wouldn't hurt.
Okay, let me get you some light under the engine bay.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, here's the fuse block. We have a Legend. I'm going to grab the injector fuses. Luckily, they're right next to each other. Kind of tight quarters, I guess, unluckily, because I don't know if I can fit both of my fuse taps in there. So we have a 15 amp fuse there and there. You guys probably can't see them because the relays are probably hiding them. I have this bigger fuse tap, which works fine as long as it's a single one. And then I have this one from AES Wave. Hopefully I can fit both of them right next to each other. Was there a question?
Not a question, but Chase said your Lumix needs focused. So I'm going to switch back over to your Lumix just for 1 second to check it. You made it worse.
I made it worse?
Yeah.
Okay, it's going to try and follow me.
You're good. Okay,
'Kay.
going back to GoPro.
Let me grab an amp clamp. Since I'm using the snap-on scanner, we'll use the snap-on clamp since it has banana jacks. We should be good on a 20 amp scale. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and loop these to where I can get both fuses at the same time.
Why is that engine bay so clean and not all rusted, Ohio-like?
The benefits of living in Colorado. Okay, and then I guess we could use, this extra lead, check our ignition voltage.
Because Colorado is a magical place, unlike PA and Ohio.
Okay, so with that, we should be able to get our supply voltage. We won't know if we're dropping it at the coils with that connection.
Which camera are you going to want it on?
The underhood again. So based off of the wiring diagram, pin A, and it was a black wire for the ignition coil ground. So let's see, of course that is the one that's all the way at the bottom. Let me see if I can get in there. See if I have enough lead. Gonna have to Superman my way in here.
Wait, let me get back out to the Lumix. Perfect.
Are you guys enjoying the show?
You're welcome. Well, it's either the back of your head or your butt. You pick.
Okay, back probe is installed. Was that it? Was there another suggestion on what we need to hook up to? I'll start setting up the scope just while we're doing that. Channel 2 is our low amp clamp. I don't have anything on channel 1. I guess we might need a sync. Let me see if I can stab one of the control wires.
Those leads look like this is the first time use, Chad.
Who said that?
Good auto diagnostics.
So I actually I have an older set of snap-on leads, but most of them are the same color. And then I typically also use my Pico scope. But I figured for today we would use the snap-on because not everyone has the Pico. So this one here needs to be 20 volts because that is our fuse power. Which one do we have on the ground? Red. So we can drop that down to maybe a volt. We shouldn't exceed a volt. If we do, we'll start at 2 just in case. We have the low amp clamp, and number 1 is, I hope, on our trigger wire for 1 coil. Okay, I'll start it back up.
Nothing, I keep switching screens on. Sorry.
Okay, it looks like my amp clamp needs to be flipped around. Let me make sure it's zeroed. We don't need a 20 amp scale, it looks like. We're not peaking over 10. Okay, what was our blue? That was our ignition voltage reference at the fuse. Now this red is pretty ugly. That is our ground for the coils. So I think everything is pretty good there. I see a trigger, but it's not that high a voltage, so we'll drop that down to 10. Let me hide this so we have more room on the screen. Actually, I should increase the, too used to the picoscope. If I want to shrink that down, I'll have to increase our range. Okay, there we can kind of see everything. So we have a sink. That's our yellow trace. We have amperage, which is showing us our injectors and our ignition coils. Now those ignition coils aren't pulling a uniform amount. Now I wish I could drop a trace down or a cursor, but I don't think they have vertical cursors in the live data. But we can see that there is a fluctuation. And if we look at the red trace, we can see we have a huge volt drop on our ignition coil ground.
Ground bad, trained by Tex. Which channel is the ground for the coil?
That is number 4, the red one. So I'm hoping that we can get it to act up again and see if that ground gets worse or if that's even what the problem is. We know it's a problem. We know the alternator has excessive ripple and is not charging as well as it should, or at least to the battery, which that could be a ground issue as well. We have almost a volt of drop on our ignition coil ground whenever the coil charges up. We could load test that ground, I suppose. I'm really hoping that it acts up and we can get it to start missing and even stall, but it may not. Questions or tests?
Bah, too easy. What's next?
Okay. So that ground 102, I think that's what Keith called out. It looks like we have a problem between our ignition coils and that ground on the block. It might be as simple as just cleaning that ground up. We may have to replace the lead.
Ground the ground and see if problem dissipates and waveform improves.
Yeah.
Trained by Tex.
So of course I didn't put a T-pin on that wire, but we can still manage. Let me grab an additional lead. Give me 1 second here.
If you want it to get worse, just load the ground more, silly.
Who said that?
Guess.
Keith?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you want me to load it with? I'll put a a jumper in, and we can put it to ground, see if that improves it, and then we can also load the ground.
Ground the ground. What components share that ground, Chad? Chris.
I'll have to pull a ground distribution diagram, but in the engine performance diagram, the only thing that was on there was the ignition coils. Although I suppose they could have referenced that ground in another diagram. I need that.
Or even better, hook a headlight up between ground to coil, ground, and clean up the ground. Show
There.
them that confused face, not me.
Let me read it.
It's a Keith comment.
Okay.
Headlight on that ground, trained by techs.
So if we put the headlight from the ground to the coil ground, that would show us if it lit up at times. I suppose that would also, it would load the ground. Sorry, my brain can't think and operate at the same time. It's hard to keep up with you guys. So let me ground it to the engine block or the alternator bracket first, and we'll see if the waveform cleans up. Then we'll check it at the battery and see if that changes anything. Okay, so running it to the alternator bracket looks like it cleaned it up quite a bit. Let me grab a headlight bulb and we can run some load tests on that ground. I am just back pinned into that coil terminal, so I don't know what those back pins are rated at, but I'll grab a headlight bulb and some jumper leads. So I think Keith said to run the headlight like that on the ground. So what that's going to do is it still didn't clean up our ground very well. Let me make sure I'm connected good. Clean it up a little bit, but I guess if our ground got worse, then it would show up as a pretty big issue. But just to load test the ground, I could run this headlight to a power source. We'll see how the terminal holds up, the back probe. So that increased our voltage drop. I'll run it for a few seconds and we'll pull the plug to let that cool down. But our voltage drop went up almost a full amp or a full volt just by adding a power source to it. And I don't know what this is pulling. This headlight's probably 4 to 5 amps. I guess we could check that, but we do know that the coil ground has an issue. But where is the issue at? Is it at the block? Is it in the wiring harness? It looked like there was quite a few splice packs. Questions? No? So I know you guys said that one was easy. That's all I had. I didn't have a, I mean, we're assuming that's it because we haven't got it to act up in the stall. We know that that's a problem. We know that the alternator could be an issue as well. Actually, flip over to my laptop. Chris was asking what other items use that ground. So I'm just going to go into the ground distribution.
About 4.5 amps, Chad.
Okay.
Chris. Break the ground now and make that headlight blink cranking. Smiley face.
break the ground?
Break the ground now and make the headlight blink, cranking. Wait, let me get your face on here too.
Yeah, I'm confused.
I'm just reading them like I see them.
So we want the headlight to be the ground. I understand that.
Okay, I'll read it again.
Do you want me to, do you want me to tug on the wire until it breaks? Is that what we're doing?
He wants you to break the ground now and make the headlight blink, cranking. Smiley face.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, Chris.
That was Keith.
I know, but Chris had a question
okay,
about
sorry.
about the ground. And it looks like our ground is right here on the gas engine. That's diesel, so we don't need that one. That's a 4.3, we don't need that. So we are except a 4.3 because we're a 6 liter. It looks like all the ignition coils, and then it comes along over here. And my diagram didn't follow here. But it goes straight to the battery. So that one ground is our main battery ground for the battery. And it's also the ground for our ignition coils, not the control module, that's 4.3.
All right. Check the alternator ripple while adding the ground to the coil.
Yeah.
Keith. Drew also wants to see that. Does it truly need an alternator is the only question left.
Okay, so we'll hook this up to battery ground. So now our headlight should have improved our ground signal. Yeah, we're about half as much as we were. Or you want me to just go straight to ground? Maybe that's what the suggestion was. If I do that, if I jumper it straight to ground, now we can check what our AC ripple is. Let me grab this other lead. And this clamp will go on the battery, and then we'll jump over to the alternator. So that is my yellow lead. Let me turn off some of these other ones that are muddying up the screen.
If you go coil ground to battery ground, the light should blink. The bulb effectively provides an additional path to ground. Trained by techs.
Okay. So let me AC couple. Sorry guys, I'm really used to using the Pico scope. So just by adding the headlight in there, we are reducing the alternator ripple. I still have the headlights on to about 200 millivolts. Does that look about right? We can look at what our min max is right there.
Bryn says hi.
Hey Bren, how's it going?
Hi Bryn.
I think we're close to the end of our diagnostic process here. So our ripple did go down, so the alternator may still be good. I wonder if our charging voltage did improve. That's our blue channel, and we're at 13.78. Let me remove this headlight from the circuit. Actually, we're not on the headlight anymore. I'll put it back how you guys recommended. I wasn't following your instructions quite right. Let me see. Okay. So that should be with the headlight providing the additional ground. Our ripple is slightly higher, but not much. We don't have a lot of noise from the coils. And we're still charging at 13.8. Let me remove the headlight, see if that drops back down. It's not, so maybe that ground is working at the moment. And our ripple didn't go back up either. So do we need to reload the system?
Alternator good, ground bad. Sweet.
Yeah.
Go.
So the ground's bad.
Charging voltage improve. Good auto diagnostics.
Yep, the charging voltage improved, our AC ripple went down. So even though the alternator does whine quite a bit, with a good ground, it probably will have passing ripple.
So charging voltage did improve. Keith.
Well, earlier we were at 11.7, but it didn't improve just now. It's improved now over what it was earlier. It didn't improve with the headlight in circuit. We're at 13.8.
Jay's here if you want to start over.
I even notified you guys an hour and a half ahead of time. I tried being prepared. I was hoping for a 3-hour notification window, but that didn't happen. Let me try shutting the truck off and restarting it, see if our ripple increases and if our alternator charging voltage drops.
Yes, load that ground. Keith.
Okay, so now we have the rear defrost on, we have the blower motor on high, and I have the high beams on. Our charging voltage is dropping. Let's see if the alternator ripple increases. I still have the headlight in line. So we're still not sustaining enough voltage to put a charge back into the battery with all those loads on. So the alternator may not be putting out quite the current we need. Someone mentioned earlier putting an amp clamp on the alternator. I can move this one over to there. Here's the struggles of the snap-on scope and having leads that have a fixed banana jack on them. So, the Lumix? Yeah. So I can't get any closer, that's all the lead I got. Banana jacks that are like this, that normally plug into your multimeter, because if you want to plug them into a scope, then you have to run jumper harnesses, and the way that the snap-on scope shares all the grounds, you have to run a ground splitter. So that's kind of inconvenient. I don't have all the adapters necessary on my snap-on scope that I have for my Pico scope. What is my extra channel I'm not using? Green.
Have you done a battery recharge current test? Pico Boo?
How much current needs to go into the battery? I have not. I have not charged the battery. I haven't checked how much alternator output current we have either. Sorry, I'm just looking for an extra lead. Okay, almost there. Give me one sec. Pull up channel 2. And that should give us our alternator current. We need to be on DC volts.
The loads may be dampening the effect of bad ground.
Okay. And so there is our charging current. We are at 60 to 65 amps out of the alternator at idle. and our battery voltage is currently at 12.6. So it did come back up a little bit.
So no loads, will the ripple increase? Chad. Keith.
Okay, so that is with no loads. I turn the headlights off, the blowers off, the rear defroster is off. Our ripple is present in the current waveform as well as the voltage waveform. Now keep in mind I have the scope grounded at the battery. I could switch it over to the engine. We can see if that changes.
The loads provide an aux path to ground, similar to how a stationary wiper motor might. Chris.
Okay, so our loads were masking our AC ripple. That was my fault. I didn't have the ground securely placed on the battery. Okay, so we have, still not a lot. It could be acceptable range. We can probably need to zoom in actually.
Back in the beginning test, a voltage drop test of alternator, case to battery negative, what was our result?
It didn't show anything obvious during just the charging system test.
So basically is back feeding?
Huh?
Pico. So basically it is back feeding? Pico? Pico boo?
You may want to rephrase because we've jumped around so much I may be misunderstanding. So let me, real quick, while it's at idle and we have the AC ripple we don't have what we had earlier. Earlier we had a lot, but we have about 200 milliamps. I put the positive lead on the alternator case of my channel 1. Oh, and I'm AC coupled, so we can't check our voltage drop there. So we don't have a whole lot at idle, and keep in mind we are still running, actually we're not running that much amperage, we're only running about 15 amps through the alternator. But we are starting to get more and more spikes on our voltage trace as it sits here in idles. So I think Keith said to break the ground. I don't know if that means yank on the wire until it breaks or unhook something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and wiggle the wires. I believe that ground comes down. You can go to the underhood.
Yeah.
That ground comes down in this wiring loom and goes down by the power steering pump and grounds to the block. Of course, now it is nice and hot.
200 ms sweep speed is a good AC ripple test.
200?
Yes. The grounds are back feeding through the loads. Pico.
Okay.
I think 20 ms sweep is best for AC ripple. Bryn.
Now is that 20 seconds per division or 20 seconds per screen?
Tug till she quits running. Keith.
Okay. So right there, we're pretty noisy. Keep in mind with the snap-on one, we can always zoom out. So if we miss something on the screen, we could pause it and go back. Let me see if I can peel this open. So what I'm looking for, you guys probably can't see that, I'm looking for the heavy black wire. I assume that it's going to be the biggest ground wire in this bundle.
Sweep is screen time.
Huh?
Sweep is screen time.
Okay. Okay, so I have a heavy black wire. I suppose I could pierce it just to make sure we're on the same one, but it's the only heavy black wire I see in that harness. Now I'm sure that it's taped up a little bit. I'm tugging on it. I don't see any change. I don't hear any cadence change. But if the problem is in the splice pack somewhere, then I'll have to tug on the other side. No change there. I might have to go down a little lower, maybe crawl through the inner fender and tug on that wire. Anything else?
Are you sure GAD?
Huh? Okay, I'll let me see if I can see that ground.
Your diagram claimed that the ground is running to the passenger side of the block, but I remember it different on trucks I've seen. Joe.
Okay, are we back over here?
You are.
So the lower right was on the 4-3. So except the 4-3, it's going to be on the left side, Joe. So your memory served you well.
Most likely brake at eyelet. Pico.
Okay, after looking at how the ground wire is, I don't think I could pull on it enough because it actually comes out of the harness and it makes a loop. So I'll have to maybe reach down there and give it a little prod. I might be able to squeeze my hand through the inner fender. No, that's a no.
AC ripple test. Set the channel to AC coupling at 2V.
At how much?
2?
2 volts?
Yes. Easier to reach from under the car. Key.
Okay, let me see if I can, prod it with a pry bar real quick. Okay, I heard it act up. Did we?
Hook an engine crane to the wire.
That is one way to find the one wire that you didn't unhook. I don't think I have the ground on the screen. Do I not? No, I don't. Let me turn that back on. I'm going to actually add some more time to the screen so we can see if it drops out. We already know that we have about a 1 volt drop at times on the ground wire. And I'm going to see if I can get it to act up again by touching that wire. Okay, so we're shooting off the screen here. Keith nailed it right off the bat.
Chad, your flashlight.
Am I blinding the camera?
No, you're blinding me.
I think Keith said within the first 2 or 3 minutes of the diag to check that ground. And he was absolutely correct. So if we zoom out and zoom back in here, we have that red trace is our ground for the coils, and it is jumping all the way up to battery voltage. So that is a issue. So more than likely the battery ground might be a little dirty from the battery to the block, but there's obviously an issue with the wire at the eyelet if I can wiggle it and get that to happen. So now we can put the headlight in place, now that we know we can get it to act up. And I think this is what Keith was hoping for. You want to go to the Lumix?
We're there.
Let me reach down here and touch this wire. Oh, now it's not going to act up. That's how it always is. I guess it may not act up because we have too much assistance with this headlight.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Nope, sorry.
Well, the ground is broken. My headlight isn't flashing, but the headlight is providing the ground for the ignition coils now. Go ahead.
I was just going to read, perhaps Chad can do a run through if needed to make sure everyone understands. Chris.
Okay. So it did install it. Let me cover where we're at real quick. Tugging on that wire and then unhooking the headlight, stalled the vehicle. Just to recap, Chevy truck with a 6-liter LS engine. It's been to one or two other shops. The customer spent $1,200 on a fuel pump, one or more O2 sensors, and a PCM reflash, and the vehicle was still stumbling and stalling at times. The alternator, there's no codes. We tested that. The only code in there was inflicted by me unplugging the alternator. We didn't get it to hesitate and act up that much in the shop today. I was worried about that, but occasionally it would stumble and stall for me 2 nights ago. So I saved it for this weekend. We scoped the current on the coils and we checked voltage going to the coils. We got a sync and we checked the grounds on the coils. Immediately we checked ripple from the alternator. At one point we had like 1 volt of ripple and it was only charging, or wasn't really charging. Our battery voltage was at 11.7, I believe. We threw an amp clamp on it later on and proved that it is charging a little bit, but it's hard to keep up with the loads at idle. Our ground at the coils, just with the regular coils firing, we were seeing a volt drop every time the coil charged up. Keith told me to break the wire, so we did some more testing. I finally reached down with a pry bar and tugged on ground, the G102, which is the coil ground, and it mounts to the same location as the battery ground on this side of the block. After I broke it, the headlight was still providing the ground. So we were hoping the headlight would flash, I think, when that happened, but I might be hooked up to a higher wattage bulb than is required to make it flash. Does that catch us up?
Yes.
Okay.
Use a test light. Trained by Tex.
Okay, crank it over with the test light.
Test light, I need blinking things. Keith?
Okay, I do have a turn signal bulb that will blink at a lower wattage, so we can try that. And Valerie will sing a theme song for you.
That's all I got. I didn't learn the lyrics yet.
Keith, you need to yell at her. You gave her all the information she needed to learn the lyrics. Okay, unfortunately, I seem to have misplaced my turn signal bulb that has leads on it already for this type of procedure. So I have a modified test light that might work for it. It doesn't put out enough current, I don't think, but we'll give it a shot. It'll definitely light up while cranking. Okay, I'm not sure what shows that better. Maybe the under hood shot. I'll turn this light off. Yeah. It'll start lighting up once I crank it, maybe.
Okay, I'll pick one that's better then.
Is it flashing? I can't see from where I'm at.
Do you want me to crank it?
Sure.
You're on the Lumix. I can see the light sitting on the edge of the truck.
Okay, so Valerie's gonna crank the engine over for me. We'll see if we can get this to light up. She's been sitting on the stool for too long. Not the toilet. Okay, we barely have a glow. Let me go to the lower wattage one. I don't know if it'll glow better. It is more transparent as a newer test light. Okay. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that. It is barely blinking. Not nearly as much as I would expect, but with the dwell cycle, yeah, you're done. It may not have enough to glow even that low wattage one. Okay, if there's any questions from what we've done so far, I know some of you guys missed it. I know I drug it out a little longer. Keith jumped right in and picked the failure right off the bat. There's probably not too many vehicles I could get in here with failures that Keith hasn't seen yet. So Valerie will read off any questions or comments at the end here.
What's a mini bunion?
Is that a question for me?
That was a question for everybody. Let me catch up on the chat. There's a lot of
Okay, she's gonna
chitter chatter.
I'm gonna jump over there, and we'll read the last little bit.
You're gonna do what? Jump over here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll let you read then.
Okay, I'm just kind of catching up. I don't have a way of reading all these while I work.
Me either. No, we're just flannel twins.
Sounds like it broke a different ground. Well, it still won't start. I broke the one small ground wire that goes to the block on the side there. I didn't take that much pressure either, Keith. I just barely had to tug on it, and it snapped off. So I'm sure that was it, and it stalled as soon as I unhooked the headlight. I could put the headlight back in there and fire it up. And then we can see if the test light will blink. I think that it proves a point that the 102 ground is faulty. That was the only small ground wire I saw going to that battery bolt with the engine ground. See you later, Drew. Thanks for catching us. I broke the 104. He checked. Okay. So what is the 104, Keith? I can jump back to my laptop. We'll see if it's on the screen. I don't see the 104 on this. I could go to component locations real quick, find out where the 104 is located at. .104 on the 6.0 is at the left rear of the engine block. I was definitely on the front. Oh no, there's no way I broke that one, Keith.
Aw, man. Oops. Sorry, Chad. Love you, man. Keith.
He's just making me do more work. The 104 is the California Highway. I thought that was the 101. No, is that?
I thought it was a 105.
Yeah, we are delaying. Our latency was perfectly fine earlier, and now we have a pretty big lag. I think it's just from all the people on the internet in our area. We'll see what we can do to improve it for the next one. I'm reading further up in the chat, so it's probably even further delayed than what you guys think. But I'm reading. Did you finally clean Chad? Looks like it. Were you complaining about me being dirty?
Me?
Yeah.
Not on here. I mean, maybe, but.
Oh, the 101. He wants me to check the 101. Okay, I'm not falling for it this time, Keith. Okay. So I think we're going to wrap this one up. It wasn't maybe quite as fun as the engine mechanical failures, but electrical problems are one of the biggest issues that techs face. This truck got $1,200 worth of repairs that weren't necessary. Even if the the exhaust cam wiped out. Yep. Not on this one, luckily. But even if the fuel pump was bad, it wasn't the cause of the customer complaint. I suppose checking a waveform of the fuel pump with the excessive ripple that we were seeing could have made that waveform look bad. I would say that we need to fix that ground, double check the alternator, and then more than likely the customer won't even want to authorize an alternator because they've had a bunch of other stuff done already. So we'll fix the ground. I'll make sure it doesn't stall out. Make sure that the ground no longer has the voltage drop. I'm really surprised that it only had 1 extra volt of drop when I was running the headlight on there. It should have been way higher. And I'm just looking over at my meter, seeing ripple on there with the truck turned off.
Give me a shot.
Yeah. So, I don't know if I turned the key off. Okay, you can go back. Okay. Yeah, if you guys haven't subscribed already, we will try to do these more often. We had like a 3-week break, three-week break because of Super Saturday. We had a motorcycle race to go to. Just a lot of stuff going on in the month of October. I would like to get these to every other weekend, if possible. It'll be anything ranging from a brake job to a diagnostic process. If it's a job where I'm just replacing components, obviously it's not as interactive. You guys aren't telling me what stuff to check and replace. But if I don't have a good diag that fits the criteria and that I can keep over the weekend, then that's what it may end up being. Let me know if this is a good time for you guys. I think this works best for us, but we also have Sundays available. But this way we have all of Sunday to pack all this stuff up, get it out of the shop, get it back home. Questions, comments, put those down below, or reach out to us on Facebook. A lot of you guys are friends with us or in the same groups as me, and I can try to answer your questions outside of YouTube. Or you can send me an email if you need to, admin@thepracticalmechanic.com.
Where am I typing?
Yeah, the customer will pay for a bunch of unneeded things, and a lot of times they won't even like to pay for the diag time for me to check it out. So more than likely on this one, I'm going to charge probably the hour diag. I know it took us longer than that, but my preliminary checks, that's the direction I was going to. I just did a quick current capture. When it stalled out, I didn't have current going to the coils, but I still had my trigger. I hadn't checked the ground at that point, but I knew that I had power going to it. So I figured that it was on the ground side, and that's when I saved it for you guys. So I'll charge them an hour diag. I'll charge them whatever it takes to fix that ground. I may have to pull the inner fender out. to get in there and fix it. And they'll still complain about it, but at least the truck will be fixed. If the alternator ripple is excessive, I'll recommend an alternator, but they may fix that themselves since it's really easy on this engine. It's right up top.
Did I get your email all right? admin@practicalmechanic.com?
Yep. They want to blast eardrums out. We both got a cold from traveling to PA, so I'm blaming you guys for that.
I knew we were going to get sick too. There was no way we could go on the airplane and New York and the subway and not get sick.
Plus, we got stuck in the airport both times. We got stuck for an extra hour and a half or 2 hours in Colorado leaving, and then we got stuck in PA for quite a while as well. I'm expecting that extra penny, Chase.
No, that's okay. You can deduct that from the cheese I took from him today. My cheese sandwich.
No, that's just a donation to the live stream. I expect full payment back on Monday. Okay, any other questions? Let me know. Well, we got quite a few people in here still. It looks like 37. Yeah, that's a pretty good turnout. They never get sick in PA. We just need to drink more.
More water?
Yeah, more water. I definitely need to drink more water. That would fix everything. Thanks for the tip, Chris. Yeah. So I think we're going to head out. We're going to start packing up some stuff. I got a lot of stuff to get cleaned up. And thanks for coming out. I appreciate you guys coming out and participating in the streams. I know you guys have nothing better to do on a Saturday night. So, we appreciate the turnout.
Yeah, y'all keep it entertaining.
Yep. Especially for Valerie reading the comments. So hopefully we'll see you guys again in a couple weeks, depending on the schedule. I know the Thanksgiving holiday may mess our stuff up a little bit. Same with Christmas and New Year, but we'll try and work around that. If you guys have other days that you would prefer to see something, then we'll try to do something. I don't know if I could do them weekly. It takes quite a bit of setup time, but every other week I think we can handle that.
Yep.
Okay. I'll see you guys later. Thanks.